Book 3 of the Odyssey audiobook. An Old King Remembers. Leaving the ocean's streams, the sun leapt up into the sky of bronze to shine his light for gods and mortals on the fertile earth. Telemachus arrived in Pylos, where the Pylians were bringing to the beach black bulls for blue Poseidon, lord of earthquakes. There were 9 pews, 500 men on each, and each group had 9 bulls to sacrifice. They burned the thigh bones for the god, and ate the innards. Then the Ithacans arrived, took down their sails, dropped anchor, and alighted. The goddess with the flashing eyes, Athena, first led Telemachus on shore, then spoke. "Do not be shy, Telemachus. You sailed over the sea to ask about your father, where the earth hides him, what his fate might be. So hurry now to Nestor, lord of horses. Learn what advice he has in mind for you. Supplicate him yourself, and he will tell you the truth. He is not one to tell a lie." Telemachus replied, "But Mentor, how can I approach and talk to him? I am quite inexperienced at making speeches, and as a young man I feel awkward talking to elders." She looked straight into his eyes and answered, "You will work out what to do, through your own wits and with divine assistance. The gods have blessed you in your life so far." So Pallas Athena spoke and quickly led him on. He followed in the footsteps of the goddess. They reached the center of the town where Nestor was sitting with his sons and his companions, putting the meat on spits and roasting it for dinner. When they saw the strangers coming, they all stood up with open arms to greet them, inviting them to join them. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, shook hands and sat them down, spreading soft fleeces on the sand beside his father and his brother, Thrasmides. He served them giblets and poured some wine into a golden cup and raised a toast to Pallas Athena, child of Zeus, the aegis lord. "Now, guest," Pisistratus said, "give prayers of thanks to the Lord Poseidon and pour libations for the god. This feast is in his honor. Pay him proper dues. Then give the boy the cup of honeyed wine so he can offer to the deathless gods libations. Everybody needs the gods. I give the golden chalice to you first, because the boy is younger, more my age." He put the cup of sweet wine in her hand. Athena was impressed with his good manners, because he rightly gave it first to her. At once Athena made a heartfelt prayer. "Poseidon, O shaker of the earth, do not refuse to grant our prayer. May all these things come true. Bring fame to Nestor and his sons, and grant gifts to the Pylians as recompense for this fine sacrifice. And may the quest for which we sailed here in our swift black ship succeed, and may we come home safe again." She made her prayer come true, all by herself. She gave Telemachus the splendid cup with double handle, and his prayer matched hers. And then they cooked the outer parts of meat, and helped themselves to pieces, sharing round the glorious feast, till they could eat no more. Then first, Gerenian Nestor, horse lord, spoke. "Now that our guests are satisfied with food, time now to talk to them and ask them questions. Strangers, who are you? Where did you sail from? Are you on business, or just scouting around like pirates on the sea, who risk their lives to ravage foreign homes?" Telemachus was thoughtful, but not shy. Athena gave him the confidence deep in his heart to ask about his absent father, and to gain a noble reputation for himself. "Great Nestor, son of Neleus," Telemachus said, "you ask where I am from. I'll be frank. I come from Ithaca, beneath Mount Nion, and I am here on private family business. I came to gather news about my father, long-suffering Odysseus. They say He fought with you to sack the town of Troy. We know the place where all the other men who battled with the Trojans lost their lives, but Zeus still keeps Odysseus's fate in darkness. No one knows where he was lost. Maybe some hostile men killed him on land, or he was drowned in Amphitrite's waves. I beg you, tell me, did you see him die with your own eyes? Or have you any news about where he may be? He must be lost. His mother surely bore him for misfortune. You need not sweeten what you say in pity or from embarrassment. Just tell me straight what your eyes saw of him, my noble father. If ever he made promises to you and kept his word at Troy in times of trouble, remember those times now. Tell me the truth. Gerenian Nestor, horse lord, answered Telemachus, Dear boy, you call to mind how much we suffered with strong unyielding hearts in distant lands when we were sailing over misty seas, led by Achilles on a hunt for spoils, and when we fought around the mighty city of Priam. Our best warriors were killed. Ajax lies dead there. There lies Achilles, and there lies his godlike friend and guide, Patroclus. My own strong, matchless son lies dead there, too. Antilochus, who fought and ran so well. More pain, more grief, our sufferings increased. Who could recount so many losses? If you stayed here 5 years and kept on asking how many things the fighters suffered there, you would get bored and go back home again before the story ended. 9 long years we schemed to bring them down, and finally Zeus made our plots succeed. Odysseus, your father, if you really are his son, well, no one dared to try to equal him in cleverness. That man was always best at every kind of trick. And seeing you, I am amazed at how you talk like him. One would not think so young a man could do it. Well, back in Troy, Odysseus and I always agreed in councils with one mind. We gave the Argives all the best advice. After we conquered Priam's lofty town, a god dispersed the ships of the Achaeans. Zeus planned a bitter journey home for us, since some of us had neither sense nor morals. Gray-eyed Athena, daughter of the thunder, became enraged and brought about disaster. She set the sons of Atreus to fight each other. Hastily, they called the people at sunset, not observing proper norms. The men arrived, already drunk on wine. The brothers told them why they called the meeting. Then Menelaus said that it was time to sail back home across the open sea. But Agamemnon disagreed entirely. He wanted them to stay and sacrifice to heal the sickness of Athena's wrath. Pointless. He did not know she would not yield. The minds of the immortals rarely change. So those two stood and argued angrily, and with a dreadful clash of arms, the Greeks leapt up on 2 opposing sides. We slept that eerie night with hearts intent on hatred against each other, since Zeus meant us harm. At dawn, one group of us dragged down our ships into the sea, piled high with loot and women, while half the army still remained there, stationed with Agamemnon, shepherd of the people. My friends and I set sail with all good speed. A god had made the choppy sea lie calm. We came to Tenedos and sacrificed, praying to get back home. But Zeus refused. The cruel god roused yet more strife among us. Your father's plans were always flexible. His men turned round their prows and sailed right back to make their peace again with Agamemnon. But I assembled all my fleet and fled. I understood some god must mean us harm. Then Diomedes roused his men to come, and ruddy Menelaus quickly sailed to meet with us on Lesbos, and we pondered our long sea journey. Should we travel north, go past the rocks of Chios to our left to Pisria, or under Chios, passing blustery Mimas? So we prayed for signs. The god told us to cross the open sea toward Euboea to escape disaster. A fair wind whistled, and our ships sped on across the journeyways of fish and landed at nightfall in Graestus. To Poseidon we offered many bulls, since we'd crossed safely across wide waters. The fourth day the men of Diomedes moored their ships at Argos. I kept going on to Pylos. The wind the god had sent kept holding strong the whole way home. So, my dear boy, I have no news about what happened next. I do not know which of them has died and who is safe. But I can tell you what I heard while sitting here in my halls. You ought to know. They say Achilles' son led home the Myrmidons, and Philoctetes came back home with glory, and Idomeneus led back his crew to Crete. No man of his who had survived the war was lost at sea. And Agamemnon? Well, you must have heard, though you live far away. Aegisthus murdered him. But he's paid a bitter price. How fortunate the dead man had left a son to take revenge upon the wicked, scheming killer, that Aegisthus, who killed Orestes' father. My dear boy, I see that you're tall and strong. Be brave, so you will be remembered. Thoughtfully, Telemachus replied, Your Majesty, King Nestor, yes, Orestes took revenge. The Greeks will make him famous through the world and into future times. I wish the gods would grant me that much power against those men who threaten and insult me, those cruel suitors. The gods have not yet granted us this blessing, my father and myself. We must endure. Gerenian Nestor, Lord of Horses, answered, Dear boy, since you've brought the subject up, I've been told about your mother's suitors, how badly they are treating you at home. But do you willingly submit to it? Or has a god's voice led the townspeople to hate you? Well, who knows? Perhaps one day you will come home and take revenge alone or with an army of the Greeks. If only Athena loved you, as she used to care for glorious Odysseus at Troy when we were doing badly. I've never seen gods display such favor as she gave when she stood by your father. If she helped you with that much love, the suitors would forget their hopes for marriage. Then Telemachus replied, My lord, I doubt that this will happen. I'm surprised you have such confidence. I would not be so hopeful even if the gods were willing. Then Athena, the goddess, spoke. Telemachus, what do you mean? A god can easily save anyone at will, no matter what the distance. I would rather suffer immensely, but then get home safe, than die in my return like Agamemnon, murdered by his own wife and by Aegisthus. But death is universal. Even gods cannot protect the people that they love when fate and cruel death catch up with them. Telemachus said, apprehensively, Mentor, this is upsetting. Change the subject. He has no real chance now of getting home. The gods have fenced him round with death and darkness. Let me ask Nestor something else. He's wiser and more informed than anyone. They say he ruled for 3 whole generations. He looks to me like some immortal god. So Nestor, son of Neleus, tell me truly, how did the great king Agamemnon die? And where was Menelaus? Was he lost away from Greece when that Aegisthus dared to kill a king, a better man than him? How did that wicked trickster's plot succeed? Geranian Nestor, lord of horses, answered, I will tell everything, though you can guess what would have happened if fair Menelaus had found Aegisthus living in his halls on his return. And even when he died, no one would bury him. Aegisthus lay upon the open plain, without a tomb, and far from town, for birds and dogs to eat. No Greek would mourn that monster. While we fought and labored at Troy, this layabout sat safe in Argos, seducing Clytemnestra, noble wife of Agamemnon. For a while, she scorned his foul suggestions, since her heart was good. Moreover, when her husband went to Troy, he left a poet, ordered to protect her. But finally fate forced the queen to yield. Aegisthus left the poet to be eaten by birds, abandoned on a desert island. He led the woman back to his own house by mutual desire, and then he made numerous offerings on holy altars of animals and lovely gold and cloth. He had succeeded far beyond his hopes. And meanwhile, I, Nestor, left Troy with Menelaus. We sailed together, best of friends. We reached the holy cape of Athens, Sunion. There Phoebus with his gentle arrows shot and killed the pilot, Phrontis, as he held the ship's helm as she sped along. No man knew better how to steer through any storm, so Menelaus stopped to bury him with proper rites. At last he sailed again across the wine-dark sea. But as his ships rushed round the craggy heights of Malea, far-seeing Zeus sent curses on his journey, pouring out screaming winds and giant waves the size of mountains, splitting up the fleet. Some ships were hurled to Crete, to River Jardan, where the Sidonian people have their homes. Their steep rocks rises sheer above the sea near Gortine in the misty deep. South winds drive mighty waves toward the left-hand crag and push them west to Phaestus. One small rock restrains the massive currents. All the ships were smashed by waves against those rocks. The men were almost drowned. 5 other dark-prowed ships were blown by wind and sea away to Egypt. There Menelaus gathered wealth and gold and drifted with his ships through foreign lands. Meanwhile, at home, Aegisthus had been plotting. He killed Agamemnon, the son of Atreus, and seized control of rich Mycenae, where he reigned for 7 years. But in the 8th year, Orestes came to destroy him. He returned from Athens and killed his father's murderer, then called the Argives to a funeral, a feast for clever, scheming, cowardly Aegisthus, whom he had killed and his own hated mother. That very day, rambunctious Menelaus arrived with all his ships crammed full of treasure. The moral is, you must not stay away too long, dear boy, when those proud suitors lurk inside your house. They may divide your wealth among themselves and make your journey useless. But I suggest you go to Menelaus. He recently returned from lands so distant, no one would even hope to get home safe, once driven by the winds so far off course, over such dangerous, enormous seas. Birds migrate there and take a year or more to travel back. Go visit Menelaus by ship, with your own crew. Or if you'd prefer, you can go there by land. Here's a carriage. My sons will guide you all the way to Sparta, to Menelaus. Ask him for the truth. He will not lie. He is an honest man. The sun went down and darkness fell. The goddess, bright-eyed Athena, spoke to them. King Nestor, your speech was good, and your advice was sound. But now slice up the tongues and pour the wine for Lord Poseidon and the other gods before we rest. Time now to go to bed. The light is fading, and it is not right to linger at a banquet in the dark. The people listened to Athena's words. The house slaves poured fresh water on their hands, and boys filled up the mixing bowls with wine and poured it into cups and first prepared the sacrifice. They threw tongues on the fire, then sprinkled wine, then each man drank his fill. Then Zeus's daughter Athena and the godlike boy both rose to go together to their ship. But Nestor called to stop them. "Zeus forbids it, and all the other gods who live forever. You cannot leave my house for your swift ship as if I were a poor and ragged man with so few beds and blankets in his home that neither he nor guests can sleep in comfort. I have soft quilts and blankets in abundance. This darling son of great Odysseus must not sleep on the ship's deck while I live. Not while my sons remain here in my house, ready to welcome anyone who visits." The bright-eyed goddess Athena answered him, "Old friend, you're quite right. Telemachus should do just as you say. That's a better plan. He'll stay here tonight and go to sleep in your fine palace. But I must go back to tell the crew the news and keep them strong. You see, I am the oldest in our party. The rest are younger men, close friends together, the same age as our brave Telemachus. I will sleep there beside the hollow ship. At dawn I have important obligations to visit with the great Caconians. The boy can be your guest. Then send him off, escorted by your son. Give him a carriage drawn by your strongest and most nimble horses." Bright-eyed Athena flew away, transformed into an ossifrage, a vulture. Astonishment seized all the people watching, even Nestor. Nestor seized Telemachus's hand and said, "Dear boy, I am now sure that you will be a hero, since the gods are on your side at your young age. This was a god, none other than great Athena, true-born child of Zeus, who also glorified your noble father. Goddess, be kind to us as well, and grant honor to me, my good wife, and our sons. Now I will sacrifice a yearling heifer, broad-browed and still unyoked, and gild her horns with gold to bless your journey." So Nestor spoke, and Pallas Athena heard his prayer. Gerenian Nestor led them and led his sons and sons-in-law inside his own magnificent great hall. When they were all inside, he seated them on benches and on chairs arranged in order, and he himself mixed up the bowl for them of sweet, delicious wine. He'd preserved it 11 years. The slave girl opened it, pulling the lid off. As the old man mixed, he prayed and poured libations for Athena. They all poured also. Then they drank their fill. Then each went home to sleep in his own chamber. Nestor the horseman made a special bed right there for his dear friend, the warrior's son, a camp bed on the echoing portico beside Pisistratus, the only son, not living with a wife, but still at home. Nestor himself slept by his wife, the queen, in a secluded corner of the palace. When newborn dawn appeared with rosy fingers, the horse-lord Nestor, jumped out of his bed and hurried down toward the polished stones that stood outside his palace, bright with oil. There, Neleus used to give godlike advice, until fate took him and he went to Hades, and Nestor, guardian of the Greeks, took over the scepter. From their rooms his sons arrived to throng around him. Achaphron and Stratius, Aretus, Perseus, great Thrasymedes, and strong Pisistratus the sixth. They brought godlike Telemachus to sit with them. Nestor spoke first. "Dear sons, now hurry up, fulfill my wishes. First we must appease Athena, who revealed herself to me during the holy feast. Now, one of you must run down to the fields to choose a cow. Let herdsmen drive her back here. And another, go to Telemachus' ship and bring the men. Leave only 2 behind. Another must bring Laerces here, who pours the gold, so he can gild the heifer's horns. You others stay here together. Tell the girls inside to cook a royal feast and set out the seats and put wood around the altar and clear water." At that, the sons all got to work. The cow was brought up from the field. The crew arrived from the swift, solid ship. The goldsmith came with all the bronze tools used for his trade, hammer and anvil and well-crafted tongs, and worked the gold. Athena came to take the sacrifice. King Nestor gave the gold. The craftsmen poured it on the horns to make a lovely offering to please the goddess. Stratius and Acaphron together led the heifer by the horns. Aretes came and brought a water bowl adorned with flowers, and in his other hand a box of grain. Strong Thrasymedes stood nearby and held a sharpened axe, prepared to strike the cow. Perseus held the blood bowl. Nestor started to sprinkle barley groats in ritual water, and as he threw the hairs into the fire, he said prayers to Athena. When the rites were finished, mighty Thrasymedes struck. The axe sliced through the sinews of the cow's neck. The cow was paralyzed. Then Nestor's daughters and his sons' wives and his own loyal queen, Eurydice, began to chant. The men hoisted the body, and Pisistratus sliced through her throat. Black blood poured out. The life was gone. They butchered her, cut out the thighs, all in the proper place, and covered them with double fat and placed raw flesh upon them. The old king burned the pieces on the logs and poured the bright red wine. The young men came to stand beside him, holding 5-pronged forks. They burned the thigh bones thoroughly and tasted the entrails, then carved up the rest and skewered the meat on pointed spits and roasted it. Meanwhile, Telemachus was being washed by Nestor's eldest daughter, Polycaste. When she had washed and rubbed his skin with oil, she dressed him in a tunic and fine cloak, and he emerged. His looks were like a god's. He sat by Nestor, shepherd of the people. The meat was roasted and drawn off the spits. They sat to eat, while trained slaves served the food, pouring wine for them in golden cups. After their hunger and their thirst were gone, Gerene and Nestor, horse lord, started talking. My sons, now bring 2 horses with fine manes and yoke them to the carriage, so our guest Telemachus can start his journey. They obeyed at once and quickly latched swift horses to the carriage. One of the house girls brought out food and wine and delicacies fit to feed a king. Telemachus got in the lovely carriage. Pisistratus, the son of Nestor, followed and sat beside him, taking up the reins and whipped the horses. Eagerly they flew off for the open plain and left the town. All day they ran and made the harness rattle. At sunset, when the streets grew dark, they came to Phere, to the home of Diocles, son of Ortilochus. Alpheus was his grandfather. They spent the night as guests. When rosy-fingered dawn came, bright and early, they yoked the horses to the painted carriage and drove out from the gate and echoing porch. At a light touch of whip, the horses flew. Swiftly they drew toward the journey's end, on through the fields of wheat, until the sun began to set and shadows filled the streets.